welcome to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod. The All Blacks off to, well, a big start, big score, big scrum, big tries, but are they where we need them to be heading into the World Cup year? Of course, the Springboks looked amazing and the All Blacks play them this weekend, along with the superstars they didn't play last weekend. We talked a little bit about Sam Kane as well, that foot trip, and what that all means. The security for players on the field and how they should react to that. And also the Black Ferns, of course, another big win heading into a game against USA, which should be another big win. How are they progressing this year? As usual, the guys joining me in the studio, Bryn Hall, of course, former Crusader. We love having you here in the studio, Bryn.
It's great to be back. Second week in a row. It's a record, isn't it? A record.
It's good. And James Parsons, of course. He had another great weekend of watching footy.
Oh, geez, it was good. It was good. Even got my old mate dulcet tones.
Yeah.
Blacks 15.
Yeah, the commentary debut.
Yeah. Got a lot of appreciation for you now, Jip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
got to bring that energy, don't you?
You do, you actually do. But no, it's great. Hopefully we can touch on that results, because a couple of guys I thought put up their hand if there are injuries.
Yeah.
Had some really good games against the Japanese on the weekend.
Great, we'll get into some All Blacks 15 a little bit later on as well. There you go. But let's start with the All Blacks versus Argentina. 41-12, a big win, a lot of tries in the first half. Were you impressed, Bryn, overall after that game, outside of the scoreline and the scrum? Were they working the way that you wanted them to?
Well, I definitely think so. Look, I don't think we can be too not happy with the 31-0 kind of halftime score. You know, scoring 5 tries in the first half. We talked around the breakdown area. I thought the interplay between the forwards was really good. Don't know if you noticed, Jip, but obviously I think there was a little bit wider in their attack with Aaron Smith and getting a really good ball and being able to get over the advantage line with the midfield backs and the wingers as well. But look, I think overall that first 40 minutes, you can't get a lot better, to be honest. I think the second half we kind of fell away a little bit. Sometimes that tends to happen when you've got a lot of points going and you'd maybe try a few more things. But look, I think heading into where the South Africans in the breakdown area, which we talked about last week, I thought it was a real improvement along with their set-piece dominance as well.
Yeah, I think you can see that probably looking at the two games, you know, the Aussies and Springboks and this game. Discipline, like we laboured the point over and over, you know, like your accuracy at maul time and your accuracy at the breakdown time. And if you're going to allow teams to sort of piggyback themselves up the field, you know, I thought defensively the All Blacks like outstanding on attack. I agree with you. I thought, you know, even when Damien was receiving it, you know, his width, but how flat he was to the line would just carve off, you know, 3 or 4 defenders, which just leaves them short on that fold. So if they don't make that initial bend, you know, he can sort of, you know, I suppose exploit it like Bowden's try. But yeah, I just think defensively though is where we've sort of looked at, and if you look at, I think Carreras is a good example. He had to have 12 carries, and out of those 12, 33% of the time he only made gain line. So 8 times he's caught behind the gain line because he can't get to that option outside him, so he has to tuck and go, and then he's getting dominated in the collision, and we all know that these collisions are going to be the big part. And I thought both sides of the ball, you know, Rieko Ioane, Jordie Barrett, Shannon Frizzell was massive in terms of getting across that gain line. Scott Barrett, you know, all these guys stepped up and dominated in the areas that we said would be key going into World Cup. So I think you can be certainly happy with that from a starting point, because I believe the more time they'll have together, they'll only get better.
I thought everybody did their job very well, especially in that first half. If you're talking around defensively, yep, no points were scored. But I look at, you know, Beauden Barrett's try, the ability of a play, you know, the play to call, and that comes back to communication, bringing that in, and that's what I want to see coming to these big test matches. When you see an opportunity, you're able to try and execute with the action call and then get the ball in, and then we ended up scoring off that for Jordie Barrett's try. And then also you look at the line that Rieko Ioane runs for Damien McKenzie to open up that gap. That's because that's because Jordie Barrett's going square. Rieko Ioane is punching into that hole, and that centre has to make a decision out the back, and then we end up scoring a try like that.
But I like how they had. It was weird in the sense that, very similar to the Crusaders, in the sense that it was so flat. You know how you always talk about Havili?
Yep.
But then that ball to pull it back, even when McKenzie wraps, that depth to create that separation and make the defender indecisive, which then allows him to explode and use his pace. So they've got that flat and fast and that physical presence with those two midfielders.
Yep.
But man, they're so skillful. Like a Jordie Barrett's, his delicate touch and his ability to get that pass to a space and a depth that allows a McKenzie and Barrett, and you know the speedsters out wide. I thought Nawara was outstanding in terms of his performance. Again, more defensively than on attack, but he was great on attack. But that depth, that going from flatness to then having that separation, just to me looked really, really sharp compared to previous seasons where they've struggled with that line speed pressure. It almost made the defence second guess everything and stopped the line speed and then created the opportunity. And
just one final thought on that. I thought Aaron Smith's passing, man, it makes it so much easier when you've got a 9 that can just get it nice and flat. You look at the amount of times that Aaron was able to put it on the money, and as you know, as an attacker, if you're getting that ball right then and there, you haven't been able to have a little look up and seeing what's coming there in front of you. So obviously Aaron has played a lot of test matches, but great balls this weekend.
You know what I'm going to say here. It's because the big boys won the competition, got a deep breakdown clean and just allowed them to get it out of there.
But even from set piece, we were talking about it earlier, there was front ball in the line out, which we all say is not as good for attacking. Smith is taking that front ball from the line out. He's hitting McKenzie 15 to 20 metres in field, and they're attacking off front ball.
Yeah, outstanding. But also you watch the delivery of how much it gets on a 45. Even when they get that front ball, like the delivery, he's almost middle of the line out, not taking away from the pass, but there's so many variables that are allowing them to be, all of them do the best. But I think Bryn hit it on the head. As individuals, they just did their job. Shannon Frizzell, great line-out option. You know, I've talked about it in terms of the sixes being that line-out option as a hooker. You always want, you know, those big boys. We've sort of spoken about the 3 locks playing. But, man, I think he really stamped a mark on that 6 jersey on the weekend. And that time he spent with the Highlanders at lock has certainly paid dividends in terms of his understanding on attack and where to get to and jumping that space. But defensively, the All Blacks line-out time were great. They kept Argentina to 75%. And again, last week we said set piece, man. If you can disrupt set piece but be clean on your ball, you just give yourself so many more opportunities.
I think that's one position. I don't know where they're going to go, Jip, because, you know, they've talked about Scott Barrett being at 6, but I think the way that Shannon Frizzell played on the weekend, you can't not, you know, think you'd give him another opportunity. Not too sure with Sam Whitelock, but you're talking about the defensive pressure, knowing that the South Africans have a lot of options in that line-out. It's going to be a really hard selection call, and I think, you know, having those meetings are really good for the internal battle, but really tough decision around who you're going to go with 6 and where you're going to go in those locking stakes.
Well, previously, if we look at, I suppose, history, Sam runs the line out. You know, Kieran Reid did have time where he called it, but I think, you know, Sam probably is the attacking line out. But on the weekend with Lord and Barrett, it was really, really efficient. And I think the selection of Coles was so good because just his calm, composed head in that big sort of occasion, you know, really allowed guys like Lord to, you know, sort of take the pressure off them and allowed them to step up. And I thought, you know, people would say he's had a few injuries and he probably hasn't had the minutes, but man, they know a test match player and he certainly lives up to that.
Approaching this weekend then, where do you go with your locks?
Well, again, it's a very hard decision. You'd have to think in a big test match, knowing that this test match is probably a big one. Your kind of New Zealand top team that we're going to pick, you know. So you'd have to think they might go to the tried and true of having Retallick and Whitelock, if Whitelock's fit, because then you also have the ability around, you know, you could play any of them, Barrett as well, Tupou Vaa'i, and you talk about Josh Lord, and it might just be able to keeping guys fresh in that kind of mould. So wouldn't be surprised if they go with Whitelock and Retallick and then having Scott Barrett, if he's not at 6, have him on that bench or bring him on for 30 minutes, with obviously if Whitelock does play, he has had that Achilles issue as well. So
there's a reason they gave those guys, you know, limited minutes or none, is they'll know. They probably would have picked that, you know, starting 15 at least last week, and based on that, you'd think Retallick and Whitelock will be in there with Barrett sort of filling that Tupou Vaa'i role of lock 6. That's how I'd see it going. I just think you do need Whitelock out there, especially against the Springboks. You know, although, you know, statistically they may not looked as efficient as it appeared, they were very, very good at set piece time on the weekend.
There has been some conversation about the merits of taking those guys all the way over to Buenos Aires and then bringing them all the way back for a test like this when the Boks have got their guys turning up, Eben Etzebeth, Ludiacha. You know, these guys are in New Zealand, rested, fresh and ready for their teammates to arrive.
I just think touring and having that time in hotels and stuff is so invaluable, especially when they've had limited prep. Like, to me, it makes sense, and it also keeps players engaged. You can rest still there, but, you know, they're going to make that big trip back, and you couldn't have had a 23 waiting back here, you know, so we've got teams playing left, right and centre. So I think it was a smart decision, and if you look at the result and knowing what those players would have added during the week in terms of their mini, you know, sort of IOU groups, it's a no-brainer for me that it had to happen.
And then you look on the other side for South Africa, the guys that ended up playing against that Australian team, man, they were impressive.
Yeah.
Guys that we haven't seen a lot. Sorry, we have seen a lot, but, you'd have to think that aren't in the South African A team thinking that you've sent guys over to New Zealand. But what it has done, they're coming over with a lot of confidence. And then I know those 13 guys that are here in New Zealand will be
They'll be going, geez, I want to get my jersey back.
Exactly, so we're going to see a tale of two ways of how it's been done. You've sent the whole squad to over to Argentina, which I think was probably the best thing. What Jip's talking about, the unit chats, the coffee chats, that time you're having in camp together, especially with guys that, a lot of the team and the Crusaders and Chiefs weren't in that first part of the week. So I think it's going to be really important, and it's going to be great to see how two different styles are going to go and who's going to get the result come Saturday night.
IRU, what does IRU stand for?
IOU groups, individual operation unit or something.
You've done well to remember that. Jeez, you've done well to remember that.
Individual operating unit, like so front row, locks, loosies.
And you go and have a cup of tea and have a yarn.
Well,
talk about your roles.
I find on tours the best part. It's the best part because you have so much time. You're not going back home to your families. Obviously you miss your families, but the times you can have coffees in the morning, through dinners, after where you might have supper, and you might have an insides chat for half an hour. And the preparation side you get of it, you get so much more benefit being on tour. So I think it was a very good decision. And the fact that some of those guys got to play, they'll be backing up with that, test experience and being able to have a good one against the South Africans this week. Yeah,
just while we're on a glossary, you said play two. What does play two mean?
If you look at Geordie Barrett's try, the first pass that the halfback that Aaron Smith gave, I think there was a forward that was inside there, but Caleb Clark was the second attacker. And so what that did is it went across the first guy's face, went to Caleb Clark, and it was square hands to then be able to get to the edge. Sometimes against high-speed defence, so if you give it to the first player, they might be able to cut that off and shut it off.
Yeah.
But because that first guy was engaged, putting his hands up, it went across his face, it fixed the first two defenders, and then they were able to get it to the space on the edge.
Just holds that defence as well. They can't push as early, which creates the space on the edge.
And if you hear that on the mics, you can actually hear them call play two. Whether that was from Caleb or Bodie next to him, it was definitely called, and a great listening skills from Aaron Smith to get it there.
Yeah. Do all the international teams or all of the teams use the same lingo?
We'd have a similar. It wouldn't be that lingo maybe, even between teams in New Zealand. You have to differentiate it, because if you know it, you'd be going, okay, well, they're doing that. So you do have to sort of have your own license per team.
There was some passiveness about is that a word? About the Argentine team. Did that help, the fact that they seemed relatively passive, Bryn?
Well, I just think the All Blacks didn't give them a chance. I think in the first 40 minutes especially, the efficiency the efficiency of the breakdown and their quick ball, it comes back, we talk about it a lot in test matches. If you get really quick ball, and especially for the All Blacks, if we're able to do that, then we're going to be able to score points like we did, whether that be through the tip ball that Frizzell did to Scott Barrett, or it's the square hands on the edge. We were able to dictate play and being able to do that, whereas I think the Argentinians will kind of taking a bit back, and I think we were just ruthless within that first 40 minutes.
When they've done well, when the Argies have beaten us, it's all to the breakdown. Getting those turnovers, allowing them to kick the threes, but it's all been defensively, and they just could not get into that breakdown. And then, the breakdown was so efficient for the All Blacks. Like sometimes they're only having one or two people clean it. More often one. And then, because the carry was so good. Like your breakdown efficiency is so based on your carry. If your carry is good, or you get those little tips and you get in behind, you can be, really damaging, and that's what they did. It was ruthless.
Composure was the other thing. There were moments where there were errant passes. Obviously there were two times where they were stuck within their own end goal off exit plays. The composure, Bryn, was that a worry to you?
Not necessarily. I think you look at probably the first 10 seconds, you might be thinking that. Like, they obviously had a plan in and around trying to get to the middle of the field, and they have two kicking options. You had Damo, you had Geordie, and you've got Bodie on the left-hand side having kicking options. But I think that very first one, the ball was just a bit slow, and so they kind of missed the jump, and then there was obviously a charge down. But I think composure-wise, they did pretty well. I think in the back end of the game in the second half, we probably lost our way a little bit, trying to play a bit too much in a few unforced areas, trying to maybe force things because we're up by such a high amount of points. But no, I think we made some really good spaces there. Again, when you've got the likes of Damien, Geordie and Bodie, that's three great genuine kicking options to go long. You saw a lot of that from Damien McKenzie, his ability that he did in the Chiefs, getting that long distance to then be able to try and, I guess, force teams to try and make bad decisions in the attacking zone when they do come back. But no, I think it's a good space. And
that's why I was sort of harping on about the D, is like in the second half, they only had 37% possession and 41% territory. So they were on defence most of that, second 40. And like, that's not easy to do. Like, that's late in a fixture, and they didn't concede a try. I just think their defensive effort was just really, really strong and is the more exciting aspect of it from my point of view.
Not to harp on about it, but when you get stuck in a place to exit like that and the ball hasn't come as fast as it should, what is your bailout option against a team like South Africa who, love pressure situations like that?
If you're looking at Damian McKenzie's example, even Richie's example, where both of them got charged down, it was just more so just not quick enough ball. So if it just gets stopped, sometimes a halfback might get stuck with a foot there, and then they're not set, and then they get the defensive line gets a bit of pressure because they can go a bit quicker. I think
you can always go back to the edge as well. Maybe take a few more phases, but that's risky.
Yeah.
You're taking more rucks. You can always kick from 9. There's many variations, but I think they'll be very clear on that. There's also so many moving parts in the fact that even though forwards may get the ball behind them, they've got a role to do to create the kick space for knowing you've got to know your kicker, and if Damian's kicking off his right and he steps into their space and you're trying to block in this channel, well, that just leaves that charge down space as well. So there's so many roles that probably weren't accurately done based off, and I know we laugh about it, but that initial carry just didn't quite get that momentum going for them to kick on their terms.
Here's the big question that everyone's going to be asking all week until Thursday and the team's announced. Do you give Damian another crack?
Well, based on the way he played and the form that he has had, you talk around cohesion and being able to build confidence. He is deserving of another opportunity. Whether they do that, I don't think they will. I think they'll go with Richie at 10, but I think what it has done, and seeing that Richie Wong was on the bench in that 22 role, Damian does have the opportunity to come off the bench, whether that be at 10 or 15. We've seen that they're not afraid to select 3 10s, but confidence-wise, he's played well. Like Ian Foster talked about it, he played well at Super Rugby, had a good performance on the weekend, so warrant on that, he could play, but I think they'll go Richie based on previous starts.
Yeah, I just think they've got an idea about these first 2 tests, who's playing previous to whatever happened on the weekend. So I think Richie will be in the 10, but probably pushed himself into second option. Is that Damian will be that first receiver if he is coming off that bench late in the that last 20.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all good things. He'll get another chance in the 10 jersey before they head off.
Do you think that there is actually an opportunity for him to push out Richie, or do you think that that's actually a decision that's been made and they're just looking for a guy who can be a backup option?
Well, at the same time, Richie's got to perform as well. So he's going to have an opportunity against South Africa, whether he's chosen or not. I think they will choose him, and he's got to go out and perform. When you've got a guy that's right behind you, he's had his whole career with Bowden in there, but they're obviously seeing him as a fullback right now. He's got to perform.
It's a fine balance, though, isn't it? Like, you look at sport over the years, that not just rugby. Like, sometimes, let's probably talk about rugby league for a second. If you use the New South Wales Blues team at the moment, there's chopping and changing, a little bit of uncertainty. Yes, that creates competition and a real genuine belief that, I can get a go here, but it also creates indecision and, I suppose, uncertainty on the field when they play. And I think when you've got your big game driver positions, you've got to know they've got the keys to the car a little bit. So I don't know if they've made that decision yet, but, you don't want to have the team going, is it him, when they're both on the field. You want to know who the guy is. When Dan Carter was out there, he was the guy.
And that's where I feel we've kind of missed a beat there. I think, like, you look around 2019, Richie was the 10, but since then, we're having these conversations still 4 years later, who's our 10? And, so hopefully this works, it all works out for us when we end up winning a World Cup, but I think we missed the beat in around giving the guy the keys early doors, maybe 2 years or a year out, saying, you know what, we're going to back you for this ability to be able to have the cohesion, the confidence to be able to say, this is your team. But we're still having that conversation now where we're talking about Damian as a genuine option because of his performances on the weekend.
Yeah, and I think we can take this weekend, but after that you probably want to see some consistency.
Yeah, you have to.
You've been in a similar position. I mean, it was you and Mitch Drummond at the Crusaders for a significant period of time. What was that like as far as your confidence and your ability to run a game when you didn't know whether you're in or out week in, week out?
Well, you do get a bit of anxiety because obviously it was all based around form, but at the same time, as a player, you love that. If you don't play well, you're not going to get rewarded. But at the same time, you're knowing that, geez, I've got to be on every single time here. And so that competitiveness is great because it keeps you on edge and you have to be able to perform. But at the same time, You know, you look at Dan Carter, for example, or Aaron Smith, right? They've earned their jerseys to be able to do it because they've performed at international level. But I can imagine the confidence in knowing that you're going to be the starting 9 and 10 for your country and being able to be backed and feel that backing. Yeah. You're going to get the best performance. You look at Richie at Super Rugby level.
He knows he's got
the keys, and you're seeing the best version of him. And so I don't think that's been done at the All Blacks, probably for all the 10s there actually. Since the 2019 World Cup, they've kind of chopped and changed, and just due to the fact we've got 2 great 10s and now Damien coming on. So I guess it's just different. The confidence level I think Richie has at All Blacks is a little bit different than it is at the Crusaders.
Yeah, and really, is that a problem? Is it a problem, do you think, this year?
Well, I just think the difference, and I'm not putting myself, me and Drummy, as like Bowden Banner and Richie in the same class, but we've just got 2 great 10s. We've had 2 great 10s, a guy that was a former World Player of the Year. You can't understate the ability that he's had at that. So you're going to give a guy who's got also 100 caps experience in that jersey, you know, but they've obviously made a decision now that they're seeing him as a 15. Whether that could have been done 2 years earlier and just sticking with it, then we could have seen maybe a better Richie Mo'unga. We might still see the best version of Richie Mo'unga coming forward if they give him the keys moving forward.
Yeah.
I think after this week, though, you want clarity of role.
Yep.
Your roles and responsibilities are so key for everyone else as much as the player. And it's not about gifting it. Like, if they're not playing well, then they're gone. But you won't get anywhere near as many opportunities this week. So it's about when you get given them, you take them.
Yep. That Springboks.
Which, if you look at the Springboks, but that Springboks Aussie game, Aussie actually created a lot of opportunity. They just didn't finish it.
Yep.
You know, especially early on, and you know, discipline killed them in the end. But they created opportunity, but they weren't ruthless enough in terms of, you know, sort of putting a nail in their coffin and getting their own tails up.
What was your take on the Boks and how they played?
Yeah, like I did this work on the stats prior to coming here. It sort of made me confused a little bit, because when I watched it, I was like, holy hecker, man, this is like, and I don't want to use the word B team, but guys getting an opportunity. And maybe it's because they're not in Super Rugby, I'm not watching these players as regular as I once was. But man, they've got some depth. Like, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
You know, like we were sort of waxing lyrical last week about France and Ireland, but I don't know, to put out a side full of opportunity and you're resting you're giving your big dogs a week over here, man, like.
Yeah, I probably actually want to apologise to our South African viewers because.
Well, we didn't say they weren't. Like, I don't think we need to apologise.
I think for me personally, I didn't think they were going to be that dominant.
No.
Yeah. Like they were, and so just coming on, the variety of the way they scored, I think really is something that I enjoyed, because we know that they're going to be able to go to set piece dominance. They've got a line out maul try, which is going to be their stock standard play. They did the front peel around the front, which is obviously something that's a bit of variety.
Poor old Vunivalu.
Oh yeah.
He was caught at sea, wasn't he?
He was. And then I think even Argentinas's third try, they just folded around the corner,
overpushed,
quick ball, and then they saw the opportunity, 2-on-1, puts them away.
No, but those 3 defenders running across from the Wallabies, and they all get stepped.
Yeah.
You know, like, surely you can see. And I know it's easy. My wife always says this to me when I'm watching the game. She's like, oh, you used to say, you know, it's easy to sit here. You know, it's a lot different. It moves a lot faster when you're out there, which is true. Yeah. So I will temper my comment with that before I give it. But like 3 of them all just fall over and get stepped, whereas surely one goes, okay, well, he's going to step in here because there's 2 others going. It was just those little things, and maybe it's new coaching, new systems, I get it. I don't think they're out of the running, but I didn't see that performance coming.
No. And I just think the last point as well with the South Africans, then I think it was in the 75th minute, Detroit's try, that was just kind of a statement for me. They just beat them into submission. They just went around the corner in the 22 area, big men, going in low, going around the corner, and Detroit just pops it over, just like that.
Yeah. We talk about gain line stats, and I don't know why I've become obsessed with them, but I have, because I just think it's such a key part of the breakdown is getting the carry right. Dwayne Van Meulen, like, I think he had like 8 or 9 carries, 100% gain line. Just at test match level, that's pretty much like, I couldn't believe it. Like when I looked, and then you know, Detroit had, you know, 90-odd%. And Van Staden, he was in the 80s as well. So that's 6, 7, and 8. Yeah. Their ability to win collisions, not only with ball in hand, but moving bodies, tackles is.
Yeah. They don't even have Etzebeth or Marks.
Yeah.
you're there, and like it just, man,
Khaleesi.
because Khaleesi, their captain's not even there, but I think it just shows like we don't have the opportunity to see the South Africans a lot now.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was just a reminder. It's like, oh yeah, rightio, this is what it's all about. And so, yeah, I think the All Blacks are under no illusions. They'll know that the intensity is going to be right up there.
I definitely drove here, like I do when the Crusaders put a score on the Blues, knowing that I'm coming with my tail between my legs. After saying I thought it was going to be a lot closer. For the Wallabies versus the Springboks. Like, I know the YouTube comment section will be relishing that, but I was really impressive. One person I would change, and this isn't to have a crack at Tom Hooper, but like, sort of like my Marks argument, like Pete Samu has to be on the field more.
Yeah, but I think there was a couple of positives I thought for the Australians. I think Carter Gordon, I think his involvement off the bench, I think he might be one of the start, and I think there's another bit of opportunity. You know what you're going to get with Quade Cooper, we had that discussion we know we're going to get with Bodie, but I think it's a good time to maybe bring Carter Gordon in, and I thought Marika Koroveti was a man possessed, trying to win collisions and get over the advantage line, but yeah, Carter Gordon possibly. And
I think a Hodge can play a Geordie Barrett role.
I was impressed.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think he's got, I sort of harped on about James O'Connor and that quarterfinal against the Chiefs, but if he could get that kicking game of his, because he can kick, he's got a big lever as well, but if he could free up that pressure off the 10, especially if it is going to be a Carter Gordon, he could be a great fix in that 12 jersey, but I do think he needs that finesse of an O'Connor and being able to read the backfield as well as having that physical presence, which I think Geordie's got a great balance of at the moment.
One of the things that we spoke about last week was Eddie Jones's wish to revolutionise Australian rugby, and go to more of an international regime where you spend less time hitting the ball up. After 3 or so, if you're not getting anywhere, get rid of the ball. That relies on dominance at the collision, doesn't it? And so it's the whole game plan falls apart if you don't get that.
Yeah, but it's sort of touching on, we're talking about exits before. Like, you can go in with that plan, but if there's 4 people in the backfield, don't kick it, because there's space somewhere else. And at times they showed their little attacking kicks, talk about Carter Gordon's try. Like, and I know it's late in the game, but do you know what I mean? Like, there are other avenues to sort of break down defence. Sometimes when you go with that prescription, 30, they out-kicked the Springboks, which is very rare. Normally you see Springboks and Argie will kick around that sort of, low 30s, high 30s sometimes, but 32 kicks in play by Australia versus 30 for the Springboks, which I know, but they had a lot more ball. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that's kicking away a hell of a lot of ball when you're behind but the yellow cards didn't help.
And I thought Lebok, I think just going back to the Springboks, man, he's one guy. I know they've got Pollard, and I know he might be injured, but man, they're a different team. I think his ability to be able to get the ball, quick ball, to be able to get it to that space, and I think, I don't know, it looks like an evolution with the Springboks at the moment. When they do have the opportunities, they are willing to play a little bit more instead of putting those contest ball or kicking threats. But I was really impressed with Lebok. Obviously a bit different when it came to the goal kicking, but man, he was something different. Very similar to Willemse last year's interview tour.
Yeah, big fan of Willemse.
Yeah, well, you got Lebok, you got Willemse, you got Elton Yankees, and then Pollard will be back at some point. So you've got some solid choices. I would imagine generally they're a touch conservative. So Pollard would be the go-to come...
He's not available though, is he?
Not available till after the Rugby Championship, apparently. So it'd be interesting to see come the World Cup, if Lebok has dominated with that style of play, what will they do?
But then they might go Willemse as well, they showed,
Yeah, I think it's that balance of bench as well. Like, if Willie LaRue stays fit, then they can probably be a little bit safer up front because he does have that flair and that natural attacking, and a Willemse coming off, who can probably play midfield at a push and cover that 10-15. Either way, Willems is there for me. Like, he's very key in terms of their ability to spice things up, especially late.
For the Wallabies, I mean, there was a lot of chat about being a dark horse. They've got a good draw at the World Cup. They've got a good 23 on paper. Do you still feel, after watching that they remain a dark horse for the World Cup?
I still think that's the side of the draw that they're on. Like, it's been talked about a lot with
momentum
us
as well.
And obviously, they're a new team. Eddie Jones has just come in, so they've actually got time to be able to try and get it right to build for a World Cup. Now, they'd love to win the Rugby Championship, and they still have the ability to be able to do that, but I think the big goal for them is to be able to be there on the right side of the draw, to be able to peak, like they did in that 2015 World Cup, when they peaked to get to the final. So I don't think it's all lost. I think they'll get better. Eddie Jones will get more of a grasp around spending more time, the selections, building more confidence around their game plan. And just for the fact they're on that side of the draw, like, let's not beat around the bush around it. It's just the easier side of the draw.
Samu at 6, McWright at 7, I think.
Over Hooper?
Yep.
Wow.
I just think, like, manage Michael, like, he's had a bit of time out. He had a tough end of last year, so I just think, and McWright, it's just his form, man. He is a mini Hooper.
Yeah.
I've said it time and time again. I just think he deserves an opportunity. That loose forward trio could be a real weapon for them.
Bryn, you've spoken about it, the wake-up calls that you've had on time to time with the Crusaders and the amount of change that they've created and how they become so integral in the championship winning.
Yeah.
This is the Australians' chance. This is a horrible gift, but a gift all the same, to change some things up.
Oh, it is, and like, obviously we're not privy to being in that environment, but you'd have to think that, you know, there'll be some review clips that they'll be saying, oh, this is not the standard of what it is to be a Wallaby, and so as a player, it hurts you when you're talking around your country or whatever team you're a part of, and you're not putting that effort around what the coaches want to see. So I'd like to think it'd be a pretty hard and brutal review, just to be able to set the standards, being not together for very long, but then at the same time being really solution focused to saying how we can be better. And there would have been some good things that they would have liked to have seen, so that they did see. But it could be a good stake in the ground for them to now hopefully kick on and be a lot better. They will be a lot better. They'll be a lot better this week.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever you've been in that position and you've had to answer that question, to me it sounded like you said, we're actually going to declutter and then just focus on the effort areas.
Yep.
And I feel like the key there will be not throwing everything out. It'll just be simplifying the 4 or 5 areas that they believe an Australian jersey stands for, and then just go out and focus on that, and then let your natural instinct of playing, because they would have got a lot of information downloaded and they probably had all of it in their head and they were trying to use it all.
Yep.
Rather than, these are the 3 or 4 things we are going to nail, and one has to be set piece, and 2 has to be, I suppose, their collision work, both sides of the ball. And if they just completely focus on that, the other stuff will become so apparent that they'll just pull trigger.
And just to finish on that, it's your intent. Like, we always used to talk about your intent. What was your mindset like in the review, and what Eddie might be thinking is a bad clip? What was your mindset? Were you fast to get into space there? Was your intent right? Were you lazy? Those are the kind of words that, whenever we had a tough loss. I look at that Waratahs game a couple of years ago. That review was just like, man, you walked out of there thinking, man, I didn't put enough in for that jersey, and wanted to rectify that the next week. And that next training, our intent and our mindset was right on the job, and then that kind of catapulted us to winning the championship that year after that bad game.
So I don't think you can ever say an Eddie Jones coach side or those players either, like, got to be respectful to them, just turned up. Like, they know where they were going. It was Pretoria. They would have had a good week. They would have, their intent and focus would have been, it just looked like they were a little cluttered to me. And that's when you get things wrong in your systems. And then you have to pull Moores down, penalty try, like all those sorts of things. Because individuals aren't getting their individual job right, the collective can't function.
Now, let's switch over to the women's game, the Pacific 4, where we saw pretty much the same thing with a big scoreline. The Black Ferns versus Canada, probably less of a surprise because of their standing in the game, although Canada, are up there-ish. 52-21. Surprised?
They had to fight.
Yeah.
I think that period from about 20-minute mark when they're 21 up and then through to probably about the 60, it was quite a tight tussle. And the Canadians, man, they were quite physical up front, I thought. The skipper's try, the way... that was Kennedy Simon went in for a hit, and I was like, holy dooly.
Yeah.
So, there was enough for them to like about, they're not fully professional or, fully committed in terms of time, so you probably expect that scoreline. But, man, that midfield again.
Duplessis, man.
Oof, man, but like Brunt played her part. So Duplessis had 15 carries, Brunt had 16. Duplessis 119 running metres versus 54, but a lot of those 16 carries were ones that sucked in the defence that freed up those opportunities. Like I thought, I know Sylvia Brunt was strong against the Wallaroos, but man, I thought this performance was better because it allowed du Plessis to shine.
Yeah. Yep.
And shine she did, and she made hay while it was shining, but without that focus and those sort of tough, similar to the Geordie Rico argument we're having. Yeah. It was seriously impressive, and I think du Plessis, even that kick that led, so her try assist, her reading of when to give a pass and actually just take the ruck and just know that, I don't know, she just seems to be in. And we spoke about it last week, but to think with the midfield and Fitzpatrick and Flula World Cup, where everyone was like, man, they're going to be tough to replace.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just think like, the thing I love about Amy du Plessis, she works off the ball. Like everything that she does about her, whether it's a tackle, she's up quickly, she's getting into a position really fast. She's got really good silky skills to put people away. But what I've really enjoyed, especially in this test match, she's actually been able to attack and been able to score tries. You know, she does all the dirty work, and sometimes it can be overshadowed a little bit with the likes of Brunt.
She's quick too.
And she is deceptively quick. So I just think she's one person I think is just, since she's been given an opportunity last year, post World Cup and even in the World Cup, we're seeing a much better version. Look, Grace Brooker hasn't even had an opportunity yet, and you'd like to think possibly, I think with USA getting pumped by the Australians, we might see a bit of change in that team. But very impressive for Amy du Plessis. I just think she's continuing to keep getting better, and I think it came at a good time for them. It was 28-21 with 56 minutes to go, and I guess to have that composure to then kick on and score, 3 or 4 tries, it'll set them up nicely moving forward against the Americans.
Can I just sing about the loose forward trios too? So Chelsea Bremner, 17 tackles, 100%. Kenny Simon, 18 tackles from 19 attempts. And Mickey Ali 16 tackles, 17 attempts. And the type 5 are very low numbers in the tackle. So the work and the double efforts that those three were doing was massive in providing the opportunity. The one work on, though, will be line out and scrum. Operate at 80% line out time, where Canada operated at 90%. And then scrum time, they were 85% versus 100%. So there is some work on, especially for the Type 5 members, to, I suppose, lift their game and what they're bringing to the party too, because it can be even more ruthless. I think there's still plenty of growth.
Yeah, and I think they'll be wanting that as well. I think it'd be a nice little check for them, knowing obviously the set piece and a few things that they'll want to work on. They won't be happy with the fact that it got that close, but they were able to push on, which is great. But knowing, Mike and the coaches in there, they'll be wanting to be a little bit more ruthless and continuing to be a bit better with knowing this USA team that just got heavily beaten by Australia.
Yeah, and that's an interesting chance for the Black Ferns this week, considering the Aussie team that they smashed, then smashed USA. We're going to see changes?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we've got to give opportunity now. Like, they've had 2 solid outings.
Yeah.
There was a bit of change, especially in the Type 5 for the Canada game, but yeah, I think there'll be change. You'd probably want to rest up that midfield as well.
Yeah.
They've played some big minutes and had big games. They may not want that, because when you're flying high, you want to keep going. So those Lucy's could do with a break as well, I'd say. Suggest.
And Grace Brooker probably deserves a shot, considering her Opiki form.
Oh, she is, and that's the thing. I think, like Jip said, we'll see some change, and some girls will be given an opportunity to try and express themselves, because at the same time, you want to be able to build depth, being able to keep those girls engaged and being able to give them an opportunity to prove themselves. So, I think we'll see some changes, and hopefully it's not clunky, and they can just continue to keep getting better, and like they did in that last, probably the first 20 minutes and then the last 20 minutes as well.
Yeah. Now, before we move on to a bit of tipping, I just want to talk about Sam Kane and the trip. For anyone who missed it, at the end of the game, there were a lot of streakers. From what we're told, up to 15 streakers made their way across the field. One almost hit Damien McKenzie during a post-match interview for Sky. So there was a lot going on, and obviously a lot of frustration building. Then a player runs around the All Black huddle. Kane walks out, puts his foot out. Guy goes down and then carries on his way. I suppose, outside of whether it's the right thing to do or not as an All Black captain, as a player on the field, when a streaker comes on, what is your general emotion? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Do you feel like you're under threat? Like, how do you feel on the field when that stuff happens?
I think it just depends. I think for me, if I see someone naked, I'm not really that worried, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I do want to go back to that, because obviously there has been a bit of heat around it. Like, Sam's obviously done what he's done. He's come out and put his hand up. He went on Instagram straight away and said that it's out of his character. He tried to reach out to the guy, which is great. He obviously did that. But at the same time, like, if a guy's coming up to you, you don't know what his intention is. He might have a knife in his pocket.
Yeah.
He might have something that might be hurting not only players, Sam Kane, or the players in and around there, or the Argentinians. And so at the same time, it's tough around, like, the accountability of that person not to get them on the field. Streaker, it's happening a lot more.
It's illegal.
It is. You know, and so I think the great thing that I think Sam did, he came out early, he said sorry, it was out of his character, he's done that. But at the same time, I think that should just be it. Like, there shouldn't be any ramifications being able to he gets suspended. He came out, was pretty much an idiot that's come on the field, really. He shouldn't be on there. And that should be the end of it, I reckon.
Yeah, I mean, Sands are going to look at it, but at the end of the day, they need to look at their own systems as well, because they're in charge of the competition and I suppose the safety of the players. And that was 15 people. And I, you know, if you look at when Richie McCaw, I can't remember the guy's name, but obviously he was attacking the ref and he pulled him off. Had it been an adult, I think, you know, maybe it wouldn't have split the, you know, I suppose Twitter or whatever. But you know, Sam got ahead of it and he realised that obviously it's been a kid, that's not what he would normally do, so he put his hand up. But there had, I believe, apparently there was a lot of altercations, you know, from other, I don't even know if you can call them streakers because everyone wears clothes now.
Yeah.
The pitch invaders.
Yeah.
But that potentially had, you know, come in contact with players.
Yeah.
But that context isn't given. I don't know that for fact either. But, you know, he's front-footed it. You know, he knows him being, you know, I suppose, I don't even know what he's 15. You know, it's not the right thing he wants to do. But, you know, had it been an adult, I'd say people would have said otherwise, you know. And they have, history shows they have.
Yeah.
So I just think, yeah, I'd be disappointed if he got a ban because I don't think it has brought the game in disrepute.
I'm amazed that someone got on the field. The size of those nets and, you know, when you go to those Argentina pitches.
Yeah, 15, that's the number.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few gaps in them, I think.
Yeah, someone's coming in with wire cutters. Because they're like, those Argentine grounds, they're like fortresses, you know. Some of them got moats, like, you know.
They won't have a moat?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it is a bit of a problem, though. You know, there is...
Oh, it's an all sport.
It is.
It's like even the Warriors game in Napier. But, I mean, unfortunately, it just means games don't go back there.
Yeah.
Because there's too much risk.
Yeah.
And you don't know what they're carrying. You know, and there is a lot of, I suppose, people that sometimes use sporting events to promote other, I suppose, causes that they believe passionately in, which, you know, you want to make sure that you know, doesn't come at the detriment of a player being injured.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see if it plays out like that again in the coming games in Argentina, because I would imagine that there's a really solid crackdown. Years ago, they had one of those no-whistle policies. Remember, they used to whistle through the kicks, and they brought in this no-whistle thing, and that appears to have worked. You don't hear the same amount, so get the feeling that hopefully they can get that going. But
yeah, we can be talking about rugby.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk back about rugby, the tipping. Let's start with the All Blacks versus South Africa. I am unsure about how this one will play out after watching the weekend. What do you think?
It's going to be a great test match. I'm thinking of the South African section here. No, look, I think we will win. Yeah. But I just think it's going to be a great test match. You got two teams that had a really good performance come week one. They've come in strong. There wasn't a lot of clunkiness around, especially the first half of the All Blacks. And we're going to see the difference between sending a team to a different country earlier and then being able to get a team that's gone over to another part of the country and had a week. So it's going to be a great test match. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to pick New Zealand. I'm really unsure as well, purely because I think there's going to be a lot of change on both sides. I think there'll be opportunities given. Clearly the Springboks will have a lot of change, but I think they would have had a clear plan of who was playing this test. So it's a hard one to predict, but I think home advantage. It doesn't matter if you've been acclimatising here. I think the crowd does help you. And just on that, obviously not being at Eden Park it's a big factor as well. I think
it's a lot closer.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere at Mount Smart is
Yeah.
something that the Springboks certainly wouldn't have come across at Eden Park.
But I can imagine Rassie be thinking, maybe he might be thinking of something that they're not at Eden Park, they're home, or they're at Mount Smart, which actually a lot of the guys love the Warriors and Wellington, having an opportunity to play there would be good. But, there's a difference between 40,000, 45,000 to 20,000, so... Good challenge for the All Blacks.
Man, sometimes you can look at Eden Park, 45,000, and I love Eden Park, don't get me wrong. But then you flick to a Warriors game and it's 20, and you're just like, holy dooly, that place is going on.
If there's some Warriors fans come, it'd be great to have them there. The drums as well would be nice.
Yeah, and to that point, often rugby league teams go very poorly at Eden Park, and the rugby teams that have based themselves at Mount Smart, while they weren't superpower rugby teams, have not gone well at Mount Smart either.
All Blacks have though. Big win against Tonga.
So
we'll go off that.
So, but if they win it, why do they win it, Bryn?
Well,
outside of the crowd.
I just think it's a continuation of the work that they've done in the Argentina game. It's going to be at the breakdown area. I think if we can win collisions and get, to the points Jip's talking about, when we have opportunities, if we can execute to that ruthlessness like we did on the weekend, we'll be able to score some points. But set-piece parity is going to be massive. Us being able to win defensive line-outs, but our own ball as well, and being able to stop their variety that Jip's talked about, and also their line-out more in their scrum as well. They've got a great forward pack, and especially the 6 props, also the 4 props and the 2 hookers. It's going to be a big battle for that forward pack, but went very well on the weekend, so that's where they won it.
I think that number there, 13 penalties, that's a lot of opportunities to piggyback yourself into the 22. That's going to have to be crucial. But as I said, discipline isn't something that you focus on. You focus on the accuracy in the parts of the game that are important. And that set piece, it was a strong set piece performance from the All Blacks. So replicating that, and because that's only going to get parity. You're not going to get the dominance this week. So that'll get you the parity, and then it's that ball carrier. That ball carrier winning those collisions.
Is it raining? It's been raining in Auckland the whole time.
I don't know.
It's rained all year. It's been,
that difference as well. I think that All Blacks played Argentina last year in Christchurch, a little bit wet, and that time that you have with that ball in hand, like they would have had in Mendoza, will be a lot different, and the kicking element and the contact will be a lot different. So it'd be interesting to see what the weather's like on Saturday night.
Hopefully, it's sort of similar to what I was saying about the Aussies. It's like just keeping things simple. But this game is going to be a clash of the Titans, and just keeping, limited menu, real, 2 or 3 things that you want to focus on as a pack. And that will allow the backs to make the right decisions, as we saw on the weekend. So I just don't think overcomplicate it. Just really focus on the individual accuracy and the key parts of the game.
For all of us South African viewers, Auckland recently has been typical Auckland. It rains for 2 hours, it's sunny for 2 hours, it pours for 2 hours, it's sunny for 2 hours, it drizzles for 2 hours, and you just don't know what is about to happen to you at any moment. So anything could happen on Saturday night as far as the weather is concerned. The Wallabies versus Argentina. Jipper, Wallabies?
Yep.
Straightforward?
No. Just think at home. I don't know what it is. I just think, I think they'll be simplifying things. It's a big trip for Argentina as well. So they're not going to get as, I suppose, much time as maybe previously. I know the Wallabies won't either. But I just think at home, it's going to be close. It's going to be close. But from what I believe, and I probably know more about the Wallabies players if I'm being fair, but I know that squad's better than the performance they put up on the weekend.
Yeah, I think we'll see an improvement in a lot of areas. They're obviously going to
need some personnel change though.
Yeah. I think the loose forwards, especially like a guy like Pete Samu, Mick Wright, you talk around Jip, giving Hooper a bit of a rest, getting some energy in and around that area.
Well,
Take McDermott, but again, it just depends what kind of style they want to play. If they're going to stick to that kind of contestable game and suffocate like Eddie Jones did with England and winning that kick battle, you might be starting Nick White and then bringing on Tate McDermott maybe a little bit late, a bit earlier. Might be a 45, 50-minute substitution and bringing him on. And
Eddie was pretty impressed by Carter Gordon too, so you'd probably think
I think he starts. I think he does. Yeah, no better chance, I think, if you're going to go for a World Cup against Argentina with his performance coming on the last 20. Played really, really well.
The Japan side, this is the full Japan side against the All Blacks 15. You commentated this game.
Yep.
What do you think is going to happen with the full Japan side against the All Blacks?
Yeah, I think you're going to see just a lot more better execution, I think, in that, and for long periods of that game. I think it's been a problem for him in the past, and even been in Japan. The decision-making under pressure and being able to hold on to the ball in crucial moments is probably an area where I think they need to be better. I think the All Black 15 as well, there might be some personnel changes, but I think they'll be pretty similar in how they're going to play. I just think the Japanese side need to take the opportunities when they do get them, because I think just found on the weekend, especially in that second half, they had no momentum after being inside the 22. I think there was a period of play, they were inside the 22, and from there, the floodgates opened and 3 or 4 tries came from that. So I'll pick New Zealand 15, but a better performance, I think, from the Japanese side.
The All Blacks 15 tackled at 91.5%, and the Japanese gain line was at 30%. So they just couldn't get their game going in terms of what they'd seen previously. So it was a little bit too easy to defend because the ball was so slow. I have to take note of a guy. I know I'm sort of looking back to go forward. I'll pick the All Blacks 15, but Ngaitai Akoi, man, I think he's just growing an arm and leg this season. He put out some Retallick numbers on the weekend, and I know he's a funny guy, and he probably doesn't come across as that serious nature, but man, he can get through his work. 18 tackles, 28 rucks, which was the most by anyone. 18 tackles was the most by anyone. 6 carries, line out functioned well. Pretty exciting. It is hard that the Chiefs are losing Brodie, but man, if he can put in those sorts of performance week in, week out, those are Retallick numbers.
Yeah. Probably just look at 2 guys as well. I think if you're looking around All Black aspirations, you look at Jack Goodhue, probably hasn't had a lot of game time, but I thought his distribution and his ability to be able to get some contact meters as well, I thought was really good. And I thought Akira was great, and Stephen Perifera, your Blues boys,
was good.
They were outstanding. I think that Stevie not having the opportunities like he did last year just shows, I think, post World Cup, or even if there are injuries in that 10 position, going to be a really good spot for the Blues and the All Blacks moving forward. And I thought Akira had a great game. Great to see him in the edges. He was on the edges where we love to see him, and he was able to have a really good day, actually, opening the Japanese defence up quite a lot.
I thought Duplessis Karifi was good. It was first opportunity for him in that side, and he's been called into the All Blacks but never got to play, but he was really strong, and to keep someone like Harmon on the bench, pretty impressive.
It should be a concern for Jamie Joseph if they can't win this game heading into a World Cup. I mean, they're a fully fledged international team that's knocked off some of the best in the world. They should be knocking off New Zealand's 35 through 60th best players.
He is a great man of planning and getting them to peak at the right time, if you think. Even Eddie Jones the same when they had success under him. So I don't think it's panic stations. But it wouldn't be a great look, no.
Yeah.
You'd want to see an improvement. I think, I think the second half was probably the biggest thing that he'd be disappointed about. I think the amount of points that were scored in the defensive side and not being able to get that right. I think he even talked about it after the match, Strip, around we've got 5 or 6 games left before the Rugby World Cup, and a lot of those guys have been in pre-season training, so they'll probably be under a bit of fatigue and a lot of load, especially early on in the season. But you'd like to think they'd get a lot better and maybe a lot more competitive this week.
There's a lot of disruption for the AB's 15. They had to go over in 3 flights. They didn't have a whole week. They looked a bit clunky at the start. They started finding their mojo the back end of that game. So I think they'll be better for it as well than what they showed last week.
The next one is, I think, it's pretty straightforward. Black Ferns versus USA.
Black Ferns.
Yeah, just by how much, really.
Canada versus Wallaroos could be interesting, though.
Yeah. From what I saw,
Canadians are physical, man.
Yeah.
That's probably one area I think that the Black Ferns really dominated them in that physicality part. So if the Canadians can get that right in the physicality, I think they might pip the Wallaroos. But at the same time, the Wallaroos.
Man, they ran some great lines. They broke down the defence. I think Canada looked much more threatening. So and I'm assuming they'll be at home. So it's a good crowd that was along at the game.
Oh, well, there's plenty of good footy to watch this weekend. So we'll have plenty of good footy to chat next week. Thanks again, Bryn, Jipper. And thank you for joining us on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. We'll catch you again next week, and hopefully we should have an All Black on the show with us too. So we'll see you then. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you send us an email. Sorry, we didn't get to any viewer questions this week. Send us an email, comment on YouTube. We'll get to your questions, engage with what you want to know, and we'll catch you next week on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Mā te wā.